My name is Catherine, and I grew up in a family that can be called large without exaggeration, although I myself have never felt like a full-fledged part of it. Rather, something like a necessary but not too important addition that exists on the border between duty and an invisible shadow that moves to the rhythm of parental expectations. Dad was obsessed with the idea of having a son, so he and Mom tried again and again, as if each time they hoped that fate would finally have mercy and give them their first male child, an heir, in whom they apparently saw the meaning of their lives. But time after time, instead of the long-awaited boy, girls appeared, one after the other, and the mother became pregnant again and again, until the doctors, concerned about her health, insisted on their own, saying that another pregnancy could be fatal for her. Before we continue, I am very curious. Which country are you from, dear listeners? Write in the comments where you are listening to us from. Enjoy listening. It was only then that my parents accepted and decided that if the boy was still missing, then someone should take on his role, at least in terms of responsibilities. And that someone turned out to be me. I had to carry most of the hard work because, despite the fact that I was a child according to the documents, in the eyes of my parents, I was more like an adult, someone who could be entrusted with the care of younger sisters. Don't get me wrong, I loved them, but sometimes it seemed to me that I was more of a parent than a sister, because while other children could carelessly play in the yard, ride bicycles, laugh, and explore the world, I changed diapers, washed clothes, put babies to bed, helped Mom around the house. I washed the dishes endlessly and learned to endure fatigue, which over the years has become familiar to me, like breathing. Everything really changed the moment my younger sister was born, the last, and as it turned out, the most long-awaited. Suddenly, my parents seemed to remember that they were actually parents. They started showering her with attention, bought her the most expensive toys, enrolled her in the best clubs and classes, and took care of her comfort in a way they had never taken care of me and my sisters. It even seemed to me that only she existed under the sun, and everyone else was just a backdrop for her perfect childhood. Once, when I was 14, I accidentally overheard my mother talking on the phone with one of her friends. I stood outside the kitchen door and heard every word, and the more she spoke, the stronger the feeling of resentment grew inside me, which had probably been lurking in me since childhood, but only at that moment spilled out with such clarity that it hurt to breathe. "I just don't have time for older girls," she said wearily, as if she were talking about unnecessary things that only take up space in the house. "Catherine's coping with all of this. She's such a good helper." That's what I've come to. I am not a daughter, not a sister, not a part of the family, but just an assistant, a person who does a job but doesn't even get a thank you for it. But I had a secret that kept me from breaking down. Grandmother. Mom's mom. They quarreled many years ago, didn't talk, and didn't even seem to want to know about each other. But I managed to find her number, and we started chatting secretly. There was so much warmth in her voice, which I missed in the house, that sometimes it seemed to me that I lived in two worlds. In one, cold, strict, and full of responsibilities, and in the other, gentle, where I was simply loved for what I am. As I got older, I started dreaming about college, about something more than just endless motherhood in the family where I was born. I imagined moving to another city, building my life, becoming someone who deserves a better future. But when I graduated from high school, my parents gave me the stunning news that dashed my hopes in an instant. "There's no money for your education, Catherine," my father said, not even looking me in the eye, as if he knew I wouldn't believe it right away, as if he understood how unfair it was. "You need to find a job and help financially." But I opened my mouth, but I couldn't finish. "We have to raise money for your sister's education," Mom added, as if it were a matter of course, as if I had to understand and accept it unconditionally. That night, I cried, burying my face in the pillow, until I fell asleep from exhaustion, feeling trapped, without a way out, without hope. But then I remembered my secret salvation, my grandmother. The next day I called her, and as soon as I heard her voice, I choked out everything that had accumulated inside, bursting into tears so that it seemed to me that for the first time I allowed myself to be weak. "Don't worry, honey," she said firmly, her voice so confident that I believed her right away. I'll pay for your college. You deserve a chance at a better life. And that's how a whole new world opened up in front of me. I applied to colleges in other cities, dreaming of starting over from scratch, without the burden that I had to carry all these years. When I found out that I was accepted to the Faculty of Economics, I was over the moon with happiness. But my parents didn't share this feeling. "You're abandoning your family," Mom said coldly, looking at me with disappointment. "After all we've done for you," she exclaimed, and there was something between accusation and anger in her voice. I couldn't believe my ears. "I've been raising your children since I was a child myself," I breathed. And for the first time in my life, I allowed myself to say what I always wanted to say. But my father didn't let me finish. "Go away," he said in a low, heavy voice. "If you're leaving, then leave. But don't expect any support from us." And at that moment, I realized that I was no longer afraid. That night, as I silently packed my things, trying not to look at the old walls of my room, at the familiar toys that once belonged to me, but have long been shared, at the neatly folded stacks of clothes that I washed and ironed for the younger ones, I felt that something inside me, it cracks like ice underfoot in spring, slowly but inevitably. My sisters didn't need to explain anything. They understood everything without words, and their eyes full of tears were the hardest goodbye for me. "Don't go, Katie," Emily begged, clutching at my sleeve as if hoping that if she held on tight, I would change my mind. "I have to," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was screaming in pain. I hugged each of them, running my hands over their tear-stained faces, inhaling their scent, as if I wanted to remember this moment forever. "But I'll always be there for you. Do you hear? Always." They nodded, but their silence spoke louder than any words. When I walked out the door, my heart sank from fear of the unknown, but even more so from the realization that not just walls, not just a house, but a whole life remained behind me, in which I never became the main character. And just as I was about to cross the courtyard, my father's voice came from behind me. "Girls, you can't talk to Catherine." Those words sounded like a verdict, like a seal that finally erased me from their lives. But I knew he was wrong. As soon as I found myself in college, surrounded by the hustle and bustle, the smiles of strangers, lectures filled with inspiration and knowledge, I felt that, perhaps for the first time in my life, I could breathe deeply. The campus was a vibrant, pulsating place where something was always happening. And most importantly, I didn't have to take care of anyone but myself here. I got up early, decided what to eat and when to eat, chose how to spend my time. And in the evenings, I could fall asleep thinking that my day belonged only to me. But even this new, freedom-filled world couldn't numb the dull ache inside me. Because every night, when the dorm was quiet and my roommates were already falling asleep, I lay in the dark and thought about the sisters I'd left behind. I imagined them falling asleep in our shared room. Did they talk about me in whispers? Did they miss me as much as I did? Did they try to remember what my laughter sounded like? And then, on one of those nights, the phone I was holding in my hands, as if expecting a miracle, suddenly vibrated. An unknown number. My heart was pounding so hard that I could barely breathe. The voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but I recognized it immediately. "Emily, is that you?" The words came out of me faster than I could process them. "Yes, it's me. I use my friend's phone. Mom and Dad can't know." We talked for hours, as if making up for months of silence, greedily absorbing every detail, every little thing, as if we were trying to make sure that we still existed in each other's lives. Emily told me how the house had changed after I left, how her parents had become even stricter, and how there was a silence in the air that no one could fill. "We miss you," she whispered at the end, and there was so much truth in those words that it made it hard for me to breathe. I asked cautiously, remembering our younger sister, the family's favorite. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah is different, Katie. She told Mom and Dad that we were calling you. They took our phones." I closed my eyes, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "But don't worry, we'll find a way to stay in touch. We love you, Katie." These secret calls became my salvation, my link to my home. Emily and Jessica found new ways to contact me. They borrowed phones from friends, called from school booths, and whispered to me about their lives, what had happened that day, and what they cared about. And I shared with them stories about college, about what kind of teachers I have, what new things I learned, about the people I met. It wasn't the same as seeing them every day, but it was something. Meanwhile, I was immersed in my studies, and to my surprise, economics fascinated me so much that I immersed myself in studying complex graphs, strategies, and financial models. I found that it was easy for me, that in this world of numbers and calculations, I finally felt like I belonged. My professors noticed my interest, and soon I was offered an internship, and then participation in specialized projects. The college years flew by, filled with studies, new opportunities, and rare but precious calls from my sisters. And even though I tried not to think about my family, the news about them still found me. I knew that Sarah was still the golden child, that her parents had enrolled her in all possible clubs, that she was shining at school and was going to enter a prestigious educational institution. "Mom and Dad are talking about a private school for her," Jessica once told me during our secret call. "What about you and Emily?" I asked, already knowing the answer. There was silence on the other end of the line. "We'll probably just go to the local high school," she finally said, trying to sound nonchalant. "It's okay." But I knew it wasn't okay. I knew what it meant to be underestimated, to feel less important than another child, to feel that you were just tolerated, but never chosen. And it broke my heart that my sisters were going through the same thing now. Approaching graduation, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety in my chest, as if I was standing on the border between the past and the future, pausing in anticipation of something significant, something that would change my life forever. I knew that this day would become for me a symbol not only of graduation, but also of a final break with the old version of myself, the Catherine who lived by the rules of others, who sacrificed her dreams for the sake of someone else's comfort. I studied hard, aspired to the best, fought for my place in this world, and in many ways, I owe this to my grandmother, the person who once told me that I deserved more, and who never allowed me to doubt it. She was always there, even from a distance. Her calls, letters, and her warm, confident voice on the phone reminded me that I wasn't alone. "I'm so proud of you, Catherine," she told me one night when I was tired after another exam, leaning against the pillow, feeling her words envelop me with invisible care. "You've overcome so much. Your grandfather would be proud of you." Those words touched something deep inside of me, and I squeezed my eyes shut, not allowing myself to burst into tears. On the day of my graduation, when I was standing in my academic robes, looking at the hall sparkling in the sunlight, filled with happy people, I again caught myself looking for familiar faces among the crowd, hoping, perhaps even against common sense, that my parents and sisters had come after all. But there were none. Still, I wasn't alone. My grandmother was beaming with pride in the sea of people, and that was enough to make me smile. After closing one chapter of my life, I immediately started the next one. After graduating, I threw myself into my work, trying not to lose my pace, not to give myself a break, because I knew all too well what happens when you stop and look back. The job was difficult, requiring attention, effort, and concentration. But I succeeded in it because I knew that every step forward brings me closer to the life I want to build. Months followed each other. I got used to a new routine: work, gym, home, work again, gym again, home again. It wasn't exciting, but it was mine. I was building my own life on my own terms, and it had its own special freedom. But then came the company's annual corporate party. I almost didn't go. I've never been a fan of big, noisy events where everything looked so fake, where people smiled at each other solely because of profitable connections. But my colleague Jen insisted. "Catherine, you need to come," she begged, literally dragging me out of the office. "It's going to be fun. Besides, there will be big shots from our partner companies, a great opportunity for communication," I conceded. When I arrived, the party was in full swing. There was a light atmosphere in the hall, jazz was playing in the background, people were holding glasses of champagne, laughing, talking, from time to time leaning towards each other to say something important that should open new career doors for them. I went to the drinks table, intending to pour myself a punch, when, turning the corner, I literally bumped into someone. "Oh, I'm sorry," I stammered, raising my head sharply. In front of me stood a man with warm brown eyes and a slight smile on his lips. "It's okay," he replied, eyeing me with mild curiosity. "By the way, my name is Michael. I don't think we've met." "Catherine," I replied, shaking his hand. "I'm from the economics department." That's how our conversation began, which at first was simple, easy, and noncommittal, but then turned into something more. Michael turned out to be the head of one of our partner companies, smart, witty, with that rare quality that is rare. He really knew how to listen. I didn't notice how the hours passed, and it wasn't until the party was coming to an end and people were starting to leave that I realized I'd spent the whole night talking to him. "May I have your number?" he asked, leaning slightly towards me. I would love to continue this conversation over a cup of coffee. I hesitated, but then I thought, why not? I've spent so many years taking care of others, forgetting about myself. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of me. Our first date turned into a second, and then a third. Before I knew it, we were a couple. Michael turned out to be everything I'd never known. He supported me like no one else had before. He listened to me when I was talking, without interrupting, without turning the conversation to himself. He asked questions. He memorized little things. He made me feel like I was important. A year passed, and one day, while walking through the evening city, he suddenly stopped, took my hands, and looking into my eyes, asked, "Catherine, will you marry me?" Time seemed to slow down. I looked at him, at his warm, sincere smile, at his eyes in which there was not a drop of doubt, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I had a choice that belongs only to me. When we started planning the wedding, I was faced with a dilemma that would not let me rest. Should I invite my family? No matter what, they were still my parents, my sisters. Would they be able to let go of the past, come and support me on this day? I didn't know the answer, but after much thought, I sent the invitations. My parents, all my sisters, even Sarah. I also sent an invitation to my grandmother, the only person who has always been by my side. Weeks passed, and deep down I was still hoping that maybe one day the phone would ring and a familiar voice would be heard on the other end of the line, that someone from the family, despite their pride and stubbornness, would find the strength to take a step forward. But the silence was deafening. I tried not to think about it, tried to convince myself that this day would be special no matter who came, but the emptiness inside me wouldn't go away. And then one day, when I was almost resigned to their silence, Emily called me. I immediately recognized her voice, trembling, breaking, as if it was difficult for her to speak, as if every word was difficult. "Katie," she whispered, and my heart sank. "Emily?" I immediately sat down, gripping the phone so tightly that my fingers turned white. "We got your invitation," she said, and there was pain in her voice. "Mom and Dad, they won't let us come. They won't even let us send you a postcard." I closed my eyes, feeling my stomach tighten. "I'm so sorry, Katie," she continued, and I heard her sigh heavily, as if she was trying to hold back tears herself. "It's not your fault, Emily," I replied softly, trying to speak firmly, but a hurricane of resentment, pain, and inevitable disappointment was raging inside me. The wedding day has arrived. When I stood in front of the mirror in my snow-white dress, examining my reflection, I experienced a whole storm of feelings: joy, excitement, anticipation. But somewhere in the back of my mind there was a sadness that I could not completely banish. This day was supposed to be perfect, but I knew that I would always remember the empty seats in the hall, those who decided that their pride was more important than their daughter's happiness. When my grandmother came in, I saw tears in her eyes, but they were tears of happiness. She hugged me tightly, hugged me to her, and her warmth immediately brought me comfort. "Oh, Catherine," she whispered, "you look beautiful. I'm so proud of you." I smiled, feeling something thaw inside, a warm feeling spreading through my body. As I walked down the aisle to Michael, when our gazes met and his eyes shone with tenderness, I saw the faces of our friends, his family, and my grandmother. And then I realized what was important. Family is not always blood. It is love, support, acceptance. The years after our wedding flew by like a whirlwind, filled with love, laughter, and dreams. Michael and I settled into our life together, continued to work, build careers, traveled, tried new hobbies, and discussed the future. And then we decided that we were ready for the next step. We wanted a baby. But months passed, then a year, then 2, and the child did not appear. We went through all the possible tests, tried all the doctor's recommendations, but nothing changed. It was heartbreaking. The next few years were a roller coaster ride of hope and disappointment for us. We went through treatment after treatment, hoped, prayed, believed, but each setback hit us harder than the previous one. And then, after another unsuccessful round of IVF, I broke down. I was sitting on the floor, hugging myself, crying like I hadn't cried in a long time. And Michael was holding me tight, stroking my hair, trying to calm me down. "Maybe we shouldn't be parents," I whispered, barely able to speak through my tears. Michael gently lifted my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes. "Hey, look at me," he said softly, his voice firm but filled with love. "We're going to be parents. Maybe not in the way we originally thought, but we will become them." I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words, until he smiled a little and added, "What do you think about adoption? A child is a child, Catherine. All they need is love, and we have a lot of it." His words warmed my heart like the first ray of sunshine after a long winter. I sobbed, wiping away my tears. "Okay," I said, feeling a tiny but bright glimmer of hope inside me. "Let's do it. Let's adopt." The adoption process was long, tedious, filled with endless forms, interviews, background checks, and homeschooling, but we didn't give up because we knew that something priceless was waiting for us at the end of this journey. We went through all the trials, through all the bureaucratic obstacles, and finally, after months of waiting, we got a call. I will never forget the day we met. Lily was tiny, with big brown eyes, dark skin, and a scared look that clung to the social worker's face, as if she was afraid to even look at us. I knelt down to be at her level, slowly reached out my hand and said softly, "Hi, Lily. My name is Catherine, and this is Michael. We've been waiting so long to meet you." She looked at us in silence, then stole a glance at her social worker, who nodded encouragingly. Hesitantly, Lily reached out and took my fingers. And at that moment, I fell in love. I didn't care that she wasn't like us. I didn't care that we didn't share the same genes, that my blood didn't flow in her blood. She was ours, and we were hers. When Lily turned 5, we sat her down and explained, in as simple words as we could, how she became our daughter. We showed her photos from the very day we met her, told her how much we wanted her, how we dreamed of her, how we fell in love with her at first sight. Lily listened attentively, her eyebrows slightly furrowed, her lips pressed tightly together, and when we finished the story, she was silent for a moment, thinking about what she had heard. Her gaze darted between Michael and me. There was a look of incomprehension in her eyes, but then, as if a puzzle had been put together in her head, she narrowed her eyes and asked, slowly, carefully, as if she was afraid not of the answer she might get, but of the very fact that she was asking. "So, you chose me?" I smiled, feeling tears coming to my eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness or pain, but of something much bigger, deep, overflowing with tenderness and gratitude. "Yes, honey," I whispered, reaching out and taking her tiny fingers in mine. "Of all the children in the world, we have chosen you, and we choose you again, every day." She looked at us for several long seconds, and in those moments, it seemed, something important was being decided, something that she, so small but already so serious, was trying to understand, accept, and feel. And then she smiled, the smile I loved more than anything in the world, sincere, pure, lighting up her face and melting any fears. She took a step forward, put her arms around my neck, then reached out to Michael, hugging us tightly to her. "I love you, Mom and Dad," she whispered. I felt my heart contract, and then it was filled with such warmth that it seemed to me that I could warm the whole world with this love alone. And at that moment, I remembered my childhood, cold, lonely, full of pain, neglect, and the endless feeling that I had never been good enough, never matched, never could deserve parental love. I swore then and there that Lily would never feel like this, would never doubt that she was loved, desired, and important. Life has a strange way of closing circles. One day, Michael returned from work, and when he entered the house, his gaze was thoughtful, focused, as if he did not know where to start. "My company is opening a branch," he said, taking off his jacket and throwing it over the back of an armchair. "That's great," I smiled, sitting down on the couch. "In my hometown?" I asked. He nodded, "And they want me to lead it." The move was chaotic, as it always is when you pack your whole life into boxes, move memories, pull out roots, and try to plant them again in another place. But when we finally settled into a new house, when the boxes were dismantled, photos hung on the walls, and the aroma of our morning coffee filled the space, I felt a strange, almost imperceptible restlessness. It didn't have a clear shape. It wasn't related to moving or work. But somewhere deep inside me there was a feeling that I needed to do something important, something that I had been putting off for too long. I had to contact my sisters. My parents passed away a few years ago, and I didn't attend their funeral. Not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to go there. At that moment, they seemed like strangers to me, just people who once existed in my life, but were not a part of it. However, my sisters are different. I couldn't just go on living knowing that they were somewhere nearby, that they might also be thinking about me, remembering me too, but they were also afraid to make the first move. I wrote to Jessica and Emily first. They were cautious and distrustful, but I sensed that beneath that caution there was something else, hope, a desire to regain at least some of what had been lost. We met for coffee, and as soon as they entered, as soon as I saw their faces, I realized that time had not erased our connection. They talked nonstop, jumping from topic to topic, discussing Lily's photos, talking about their families, their children, and how much they missed me. "Katie," Emily said, squeezing my hand, "we're so glad you're back. Time seemed to disappear." We started organizing family gatherings, holidays, meetings, where Lily ran around the room with delight, playing with her cousins, laughing, making new friends. And I loved watching her surrounded by her family, seeing how she blossomed, how her world became bigger, fuller, richer. But then Sarah showed up. From the moment we met again, I realized that she hadn't changed. She was still a spoiled girl who always got everything for nothing. And now she had grown into a woman who was sure that the world revolved around her and her family. At our first big family meeting, Sarah showed up with her husband and son Tommy. From the very first moment, it was clear that she perceived all this not as a reunion, but as a competition. "Tommy, show your aunts how well you can sing," she exclaimed, pushing her son forward. "He's taking lessons, you know. The teacher says he's a child prodigy." I watched Lily step back. Her eyes droop down, and her shoulders hunch a little. She's not used to such competitions. After a while, she approached Tommy, timidly handing him a piece of candy. "Do you want to share?" "What is it?" she asked shyly. But before Tommy could respond, Sarah cut in sharply. "Tommy, don't take this!" she screamed, as if he was about to touch something dirty. I whirled around, my heart clenching. "Sarah, what are you saying?" "Well, you know," she replied with a shrug. "You never know, with her breed." Her voice dripped with contempt. "Come on, Tommy," she added, pulling her son away by the hand. "Let's play with your real cousins." I felt something boiling inside me as rage rose in my chest, hot, burning, all-consuming. I took a step forward, but before I could say a word, Lily looked at me, and in her eyes I saw what I was most afraid of: pain. The same pain that I once knew all too well. I stood there, shocked, offended, feeling something hot and scalding rising inside, as if a wave of indignation was about to overwhelm me. Did Sarah really just say that about my daughter? About my Lily? About the little man I loved with all my heart? About the child who was as much a part of our family as anyone else? From that moment on, the tension became unbearable. Every family gathering, every celebration, every meeting that once brought joy was now accompanied by a sense of a hidden battle in which Sarah was clearly not going to give in. She didn't make any overt attacks, didn't raise her voice, but her every word, every phrase was laced with poison. She spoke loudly, with feigned concern, that we don't know what diseases Lily might have, and that her genetic origin remains a mysterious. She pursed her lips and looked meaningfully away when someone praised Lily. And when Tommy started playing with my daughter, she was there. She found a reason to recall him, coming up with some ridiculous excuses. Every time I ran into her, I defended my daughter. I didn't let those words hang in the air. I didn't leave them unanswered. I firmly said that Lily was my daughter, that she was beautiful, that no one dared to talk about her in that tone. But no matter how hard I tried, the damage had already been done. I saw how Lily gradually moved away, how she became quieter and quieter at these family events, how she no longer ran with a joyful squeal to her cousins, but remained on the sidelines, tugging at the edge of her dress and casting anxious glances at me, as if asking me to take her away from here. One evening, after another tense family gathering, when we returned home and Lily silently climbed into her bed, facing the wall, I realized I can't let this go on anymore. I politely declined the next invitation, citing my busy schedule. The next day, the same thing. I started rejecting invitations one by one, making up reasons and excuses. But in reality, it was simple. I didn't want to put Lily through this anymore. At first, Jessica and Emily tried to convince me that everything could be fixed, that Sarah just didn't understand what she was doing. But then, seeing how much it hurt Lily, they understood and didn't insist anymore. When the dust settled, when family dramas faded into the background, I found solace in my visits to my grandmother. She was my rock in everything, and now, in her twilight years, I wanted to be by her side the same way she was with me. Every weekend, Lily and I went to Grandma's house, a short trip that became a small holiday for us. Every time we drove up to the house, Grandma was already waiting for us on the porch, her face lit up with joy. "Here are my girls," she exclaimed, holding out her hands to us. Lily, laughing, ran up the stairs, throwing herself into her grandmother's arms. "Grandma, I've missed you." Watching them together has always warmed my heart.
Grandma showered Lily with love and attention, taught her how to bake apple pies, told her stories about my childhood and her youth, and secretly gave her sweets when she thought I wasn't looking. She never treated Lily differently just because I adopted her. For Grandma, Lily was part of the family, plain and simple. But over time, Grandma began to weaken. Our visits were filled with silence. Long conversations were replaced by leisurely sitting in the living room. Lily read aloud to her, showed her her drawings, told her about school, and Grandma, even in her weakened state, listened with warmth and attention. The day she left was one of the most difficult in my life. We were with her until the last moment, holding her hand as she peacefully slipped away, her breathing getting easier and quieter. Lily, wise beyond her years, climbed onto her bed and curled up against her grandmother's shoulder. "It's all right, Grandma," she whispered, stroking her hand, as Grandma used to do with me. "You can rest now. We love you." In the following days, while we were coping with our grief, sorting out Grandma's things, settling all the formalities, we received an unexpected call. "This is your grandmother's lawyer," said the voice on the phone. "I need you to come to my office." When we arrived, he looked at us with sympathy, pointed to the chairs in front of his desk, and said, "Your grandmother left a will, and, well, you might want to sit down." What he said next left me speechless. Grandma left everything to me and Lily. A house, several cars, savings, investment assets, more than $1 million. "Your grandfather was a very successful businessman," the lawyer explained, "and your grandmother turned out to be a shrewd investor. She was going to leave everything to your mother, despite their differences. But after her death, she reconsidered her decision." I nodded,
realizing that Grandma had changed her will, leaving everything to us. I looked at Lily, who was sitting next to me, her big eyes full of questions. "So Grandma wanted us to have it all?" "Yes, honey," I replied softly. And at that moment, I realized that Grandma, even in her last goodbye, had found a way to tell us how much she loved us. When it became known about the inheritance, my phone literally started bursting with calls and messages. And although I expected that there would be considerable interest in this news, I still did not think that it would turn out to be so intrusive. Jessica and Emily called first. Their voices were sincere, filled with joy for me, and in their words I felt genuine support, the one that we had been looking for in each other for so long. "Katie, you deserve this," Jessica said, and Emily joined in. Grandma always knew who in our family really cared, who was there for us, who was really family. But then the call came, which I was afraid of, but deep down I knew it was inevitable. Sarah. I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to hear her voice again, that sickly, sweet tone that hid cold, calculated cruelty. But something inside made me press the call button. "Catherine," she drawled, and by the way she said my name slowly and deliberately, I immediately realized that this call was not about reconciliation at all. "I heard about my grandmother's will. So, when will you share the inheritance with the rest of us?" I felt a flash of anger, so strong that I had to take a deep breath to keep from shouting into the phone. After everything she's said, after everything she's done, after all the hurt and humiliation she's caused my daughter, she dares to talk to me like that? As if it wasn't something important, but just a division of property in which she considers herself entitled to claim her share? "I won't," I said firmly, not giving myself even a second to hesitate. "An inheritance for Lily and me. That's what Grandma wanted." "But that's not fair," Sarah screamed, instantly dropping her mask of complacency. "I'm family too." "No, Sarah," I interrupted her, my voice as hard as steel. "You don't deserve it." And I hung up the phone. When I put down my phone, I felt the weight that I had been carrying for years lifted from my shoulders. For so long, I've been trying to please everyone, be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, and conform to other people's expectations. But now I realize it's time to put my real family first. A few months later, Jessica's birthday arrived, and despite my doubts, I decided it was time to show up at the family gathering. When we arrived, the party was in full swing. Jessica's backyard was filled with laughter and conversations. Children were running after each other, playing tag. Adults were standing in groups holding glasses of drinks and chatting about life. For a moment, it seemed to me that I had returned to the old days, when the family was still something whole, not split into parts, when I could be among them and not feel like a stranger. "I'm so glad you came, Katie," Jessica whispered, hugging me, and I saw genuine happiness in her eyes. Everything was fine for the first hour or so. Lily immediately joined her cousins, their ringing laughter echoed through the courtyard, and I, watching her, finally allowed myself to relax, thinking that maybe my concern was in vain, that maybe now everything would be different. But then I saw Sarah. She moved from child to child, leaning over them, whispering something in their ear. And although I couldn't hear the words, I saw the children's eyes widen as they cast strange, wary glances at Lily, as they gradually began to move away from her, forming their own circle, emphasizing that she was there, not included. And at some point, Lily was left alone. She was standing to the side, holding a toy that she had just been playing with the others, but now no one else wanted to play with it. I saw how she looked around the crowd, how her face wrinkled in pain and embarrassment, how her shoulders clenched, and then, before I could do anything, she turned around and ran up to me, tears already flowing down her cheeks. "Mommy," she sobbed, sobbing so hard she could barely speak, "they don't want to play with me anymore." They said I was sick and that I wasn't really a family. Rage boiled up inside me. I hugged Lily tightly, looked into her eyes and said, "You're the best girl in the world. Do you hear me? You didn't do anything wrong. They don't understand that." But that wasn't enough for me. I carefully handed Lily over to Jessica, who nodded at me, understanding without words, and went to Sarah. She watched the whole scene with a smug smile, holding a glass of wine in her hands, as if it was just another play in which she played the main role. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked, quietly but firmly. Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, calm down, Catherine," she drawled, pretending to roll her eyes. "I'm just telling the kids the truth they deserve to know about her condition." I clenched my fists, feeling my vision go dark with anger. "Condition?" I literally spat out the word. "The only person with the disease here is you, Sarah. Your behavior is disgusting." A crowd began to gather around us. The other adults, who had been watching from the sidelines at first, now cast worried glances at us. Sarah's face twisted into an ugly grimace. "My behavior?" she exclaimed mockingly. "How rich it sounds, Catherine, from you, the one who shamelessly took money from my grandmother, depriving all of us of our legitimate inheritance." I gritted my teeth, but Sarah continued, her voice getting louder, attracting more and more attention. "And for what? To give money to this girl who is not even a part of this family?" Her words echoed through the courtyard. "How dare you?" My voice was shaking with rage, but I held on. "Lily is my daughter, and she is as much a part of this family as anyone else." Sarah laughed, dryly, angrily, with mockery. "Family? She's not even our relative, Catherine. She's just some random kid that you picked up. Who knows who her parents were? Maybe drug addicts? Maybe criminals? She has no rights to our family's legacy." The air around us became tense, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I felt that this was a moment after which there would be no turning back. I was shaking with rage, from resentment, from the anger that boiled inside me, from disgust for the man standing in front of me, for the woman who had once been my younger sister, but now had turned into an outsider, incapable of compassion, an outsider who was ready to hurt a child for the sake of his petty ambitions. "You don't know anything about Lily, Sarah." My voice was low and controlled, but a storm was raging inside me. "You don't know anything about her biological parents. And you know what? It doesn't make any difference. She's my daughter. I love her more than anything in the world." Sarah smiled contemptuously, cocking her head to one side, as if she were studying me, as if trying to find a weak spot where words could stick sharper than a knife. "Oh, is that what they call love?" she said with fake surprise. "You're using a child to steal from your own family, and you call it love? Admit it, Catherine. You're just a thief." "You got Grandma's money with that girl's help, but we won't stand for it anymore. It's time for you to share what rightfully belongs to us all." I clenched my fists, preparing to respond, preparing to set the record straight once and for all. But before I could open my mouth, Jessica stepped forward. "That's enough, Sarah," she said firmly, and there was so much determination in her voice that Sarah froze, frowning in disbelief. "You have no right to talk to Catherine like that. You have no right to treat Lily like that." Sarah's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Are you taking her side?" "What is it?" she managed, her voice trembling with indignation. Emily joined Jessica, standing next to me with her arms folded. "We both take her side," she said. "Catherine was always there for us, even when our own parents were away. She raised us, Sarah. She deserves every penny of this inheritance." I felt a lump rise in my throat, touched by the support of my sisters, support that I did not even dare to dream of. Sarah's face contorted with rage. "You are traitors! Stop it!" she screamed. "How dare you? You are betraying the memory of our parents." Emily grinned, her lips curling into a bitter half-smile. "Our parents?" She shook her head. "Are you talking about the same parents who neglected us? About the same parents who showered attention only on you, while Catherine worked hard, raising us as an adult? About the same parents who deprived her of everything because she dared to want an education?" Jessica nodded. "And let's not forget, Sarah," she added, "how you took Mom and Dad's house and all their savings after they died. You haven't shared even a little bit with any of us." I gasped, startled. "Is that true?" My voice was quiet, but there was ice in it. Sarah swallowed convulsively. Her face paled and her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it, looking like a fish stranded on a beach. "It's true," Emily nodded. "She has everything. When Mom and Dad died, she disposed of their possessions as if we didn't even exist." A wave of frustration, resentment, and anger washed over me. All this time, Sarah was accusing me of stealing, and she did the same thing. I took a deep breath, gathered all my strength, and looked her straight in the eye. "Sarah," my voice was calm, but as hard as steel, "I think it's time for you to leave." "You can't make me," she began, but Jessica cut her off. "Yes, it can," she said coldly. "This is my house, and I want you to leave. We are all tired of your tantrums and your cruelty. Until you learn to treat Catherine and Lily with respect, you are not welcome here." Sarah looked around as if looking for support, but found only disapproving looks. She was alone. With one last contemptuous glance at me, she grabbed Tommy's arm and hurried out. The gate closed behind her with a loud click, and at the same moment, I felt the weight that had been weighing on me for so many years finally disappear. I turned to my sisters, tears glistening in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. That evening, when I put Lily to bed, I sat by her bed for a long time, watching her breathe softly, her lips tremble slightly in her sleep, and her small fingers clench into fists. I ran my hand through her soft hair, and a thought was brewing inside me that had been sitting somewhere in the back of my mind for a long time, but only now it took shape into a firm decision. The next morning, I called my sisters. "I want to talk to you about the inheritance," I said. "Katie, you don't need to," Jessica began, but I cut her off. "No, I need to." I told them I was leaving $1 million for our family, but the house and cars were theirs. They deserved it as much as I did, and I wanted them to have something from Grandma, too. I felt a sense of peace coming over me. I transferred half of the money to a trust fund for Lily's future to ensure that she always has support, the opportunity to study, and the opportunity to choose her own destiny. "What about the others?" Michael asked when I told him about my decision. I smiled. "We're going to Disneyland, which Lily dreamed of," I said, leaning over him, leaning on his shoulder. "We will renovate our house, create a space where our family can grow, where Lily will be happy." I paused, then looked at him, feeling a new dream forming inside me. "And maybe we will consider adopting another child." Michael smiled and squeezed my hand in his. "About a brother or sister for Lily?" I nodded. "Yes, about a new member of our family. Because love is not DNA. Love is a choice, and I'm ready to do it again."